In the annals of American history, few events have left as indelible a mark as the Civil War. Spanning from 1861 to 1865, this brutal conflict tore the United States apart, pitting brother against brother and state against state. This documentary-style piece explores the causes, heroes, conclusion, and lasting effects of the American Civil War. The roots of the Civil War can be traced back to a complex web of issues, primarily revolving around the divisive topic of slavery. Slavery had been a contentious issue in the United States since its inception, and by the mid-19th century, tensions had reached a breaking point. The North and South had distinct economic, social, and political differences. The South's agricultural economy heavily depended on slavery, while the North's industrial and commercial interests began to diverge from the institution. Additionally, political disagreements over the expansion of slavery into newly acquired territories further deepened the divide. The election of Abraham Lincoln as the 16th President of the United States in 1860, a Republican who opposed the spread of slavery, was a catalyst for Southern states' secession. The American Civil War, a conflict that tore the United States apart for several years, has a complex and multifaceted origin deeply rooted in historical, economic, social, and political factors. This in-depth exploration aims to unravel the intricate web of causes that led to this momentous event in American history. At the heart of the Civil War's origins lies the issue of slavery. This morally reprehensible institution had been a part of the American landscape since the earliest days of colonization. By the 19th century, slavery had evolved into a critical economic and social institution in the southern states. The plantation system, heavily reliant on enslaved labor, fueled the South's cotton and tobacco industries, making it the economic engine of the nation. As the northern states industrialized and embraced a more diverse economy, they began to distance themselves from the institution of slavery. This divergence in economic interests deepened the sectionalism between the North and the South. The South saw any threat to the expansion of slavery into newly acquired territories as a direct attack on their way of life. Efforts to maintain a delicate balance between slave and free states were made through a series of compromises in the years leading up to the Civil War. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 stands as a pivotal moment in American history, representing a valiant but ultimately fragile attempt to address the growing sectional tensions between the North and the South over the contentious issue of slavery. This compromise, born out of necessity to preserve the balance of power in Congress, had significant ramifications for the future of the United States. By the early 19th century, the United States rapidly expanded westward, acquiring new territories through purchases like the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. As these new lands were opened for settlement, whether they would be slave or free states, became a source of fierce contention. The North had largely moved away from slavery, embracing industrialization and wage labor, while the South's agrarian economy was deeply intertwined with the institution of slavery. The need for compromise became evident as Missouri, a territory acquired in the Louisiana Purchase, sought admission to the Union as a state in 1819. Its application to enter as a slave state threatened to upset the delicate balance of power between free and slave states in Congress, where each state's representation was based on its population. In March 1820, Senator Henry Clay of Kentucky, often called the Great Compromiser, proposed a series of measures to resolve the Missouri crisis. The key provisions of the Missouri Compromise were as follows. Missouri would be admitted to the Union as a slave state. Maine, formerly a part of Massachusetts, would be admitted as a free state. Slavery would be prohibited in any new territories formed north of the parallel 36° 30 in the Louisiana Territory, excluding Missouri. The third provision, known as the 36° 30 line, was especially significant, as it aimed to maintain a balance between free and slave states as the nation expanded westward. While the compromise succeeded in admitting Missouri and Maine and averting immediate conflict, it did not resolve the underlying issues surrounding slavery's expansion. The Missouri Compromise temporarily eased tensions, but was far from a permanent solution. It papered over the fundamental disagreement between the North and the South over the extension of slavery into newly acquired territories. The compromise also raised questions about the federal government's role in regulating slavery in the regions and the legality of such measures. Nonetheless, the compromise preserved the balance of power in Congress. The admission of Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state ensured that the Senate remained evenly divided between slave and free states. Preserving this balance was crucial in preventing one section of the country from dominating the other through legislative means. While the Missouri Compromise temporarily eased sectional tensions, it merely postponed the inevitable reckoning over slavery. The compromise's 36° 30 line would later become a point of contention as debates over the expansion of slavery into new territories continued to divide the nation. The compromise's most significant long-term consequence was that it set the stage for future conflicts over slavery, culminating in the American Civil War. As the United States acquired more territory through events like the Mexican-American War in the 1840s, the question of whether these territories would allow slavery became increasingly contentious. The Missouri Compromise also highlighted the limitations of compromise as a solution to deeply entrenched moral and political differences. While it temporarily preserved the peace, it failed to address the moral abhorrence of slavery and the deeply held convictions on both sides. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 was a well-intentioned effort to manage the complex issue of slavery's expansion in the rapidly expanding United States. However, it proved to be a short-term fix to a long-term problem. Instead of resolving the underlying tensions, it exacerbated them, setting the stage for further conflicts and eventually the eruption of the Civil War in 1861. The compromise's legacy serves as a reminder of the profound difficulties of reconciling opposing principles and interests, mainly when the core issue is human rights and morality. Ultimately, the Missouri Compromise reflects the nation's struggle to balance the ideals of freedom and equality with the harsh realities of its history. This struggle continues to shape the United States to this day. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 was a landmark piece of legislation that had far-reaching consequences in the lead-up to the American Civil War. While it was intended to address the issue of westward expansion and the organization of new territories, the act ultimately exacerbated tensions between North and South over the expansion of slavery. It paved the way for the violent and tumultuous events of Bleeding Kansas. In the early 1850s, the United States grappled with the question of organizing the vast western territories acquired through various acquisitions, including the Louisiana Purchase and the Mexican-American War. Specifically, the regions of Kansas and Nebraska were being eyed for settlement and development. However, the issue of whether these territories would be admitted as slave or free states became a contentious point of debate. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 had established a precedent by drawing an imaginary line at 36 degrees 30 latitude, stipulating that slavery would be prohibited in any new territories formed north of that line, while those south of it could allow slavery. This compromise, while successful in its time, was becoming increasingly untenable as the nation expanded westward. In 1854, Senator Stephen A. Douglas of Illinois introduced the Kansas-Nebraska Act as an attempt to address the territorial issue and facilitate the construction of a transcontinental railroad. The core provision of the act was the principle of popular sovereignty, which allowed the settlers of each territory to decide whether to permit or prohibit slavery. This effectively repealed the Missouri Compromise's restriction on slavery north of the 36 degree 30 line. Douglas argued that popular sovereignty was consistent with the principles of democracy and self-determination, allowing the people who lived in these territories to determine their fate. However, his motivation was also driven by economic interests, as he sought to promote the construction of a transcontinental railroad through Illinois, which would benefit economically from the railroad's route. The passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act set off a political firestorm. While it aimed to diffuse the issue of slavery, it had the opposite effect, as pro-slavery and anti-slavery factions descended upon the Kansas Territory, determined to influence the outcome of its popular sovereignty vote. The situation quickly deteriorated into violence, earning the territory the infamous moniker of Bleeding Kansas. The first significant outbreak of violence occurred in May 1856, when pro-slavery settlers attacked the town of Lawrence, an anti-slavery stronghold. In retaliation, the fiery abolitionist John Brown and his followers committed a brutal massacre at Pottawatomie Creek, killing 5 pro-slavery settlers. These events marked the beginning of a series of deadly clashes that continued for years. The violence in Kansas had a profound impact on the national stage. It exposed the deep divide between North and South, and shattered the illusion that popular sovereignty could peacefully resolve the slavery question in new territories. The events in Kansas were widely covered in newspapers and fueled passions on both sides. The turmoil in Kansas also contributed to the rise of new political parties and movements. The Republican Party, founded in the 1850s, was committed to opposing the spread of slavery into the territories and gained support from anti-slavery Northerners who were outraged by the violence in Kansas. The Kansas-Nebraska Act was a pivotal moment in the lead-up to the American Civil War. It revealed the intractable nature of the slavery issue and highlighted the inability of compromise to prevent conflict when deeply held moral convictions were at stake. The violence and bloodshed in Kansas underscored the urgency of addressing the issue of slavery before it tore the nation apart. In the long run, the Kansas-Nebraska Act contributed to the breakdown of the fragile balance between North and South, and played a significant role in the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861. The legacy of Bleeding Kansas serves as a stark reminder of the profound consequences of political decisions and the high cost of failing to address fundamental issues of justice and equality. The emergence of the Republican Party as a significant political force in the 1850s added fuel to the fire. Comprised primarily of Northern abolitionists and those who opposed the expansion of slavery, the Republican Party nominated Abraham Lincoln as its candidate for the 1860 presidential election. Lincoln's victory in the election without winning a single Southern state alarmed the South. They saw his election as a direct threat to their way of life, as Lincoln had expressed his opposition to the spread of slavery into the territories. This fear of Northern dominance led to the secession of Southern states from the Union. South Carolina became the first state to secede from the Union on December 20th, 1860, followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas in quick succession. These states formed the Confederate States of America, electing Jefferson Davis as their president. As the Confederate States seized federal forts and arsenals, tensions reached a breaking point. The first shots of the Civil War were fired at Fort Sumter, South Carolina, on April 12, 1861, when Confederate forces bombarded the Union-held fort. This marked the beginning of a brutal and devastating conflict that would engulf the nation for 4 long years. The origins of the American Civil War are deeply intertwined with the institution of slavery, economic disparities, regional differences, and political failures. As the nation struggled to reconcile its ideals of freedom and equality with the harsh reality of slavery, it became clear that a violent reckoning was inevitable. The Civil War served as a stark reminder of the cost of failing to address fundamental issues of justice and equality, and its echoes continue to resonate in the ongoing pursuit of a perfect union in the United States. The Civil War was a crucible that forged many heroes on both sides of the conflict. These leaders demonstrated unwavering courage, strategic brilliance, and a commitment to the principles of liberty and equality. This in-depth exploration pays tribute to some of the most prominent Union heroes of the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln's role in the American Civil War is one of the most consequential chapters in American history. As the 16th President of the United States, Lincoln was thrust into a tumultuous period defined by the struggle for the preservation of the Union, the abolition of slavery, and the restoration of the United States as an indivisible nation. When Lincoln assumed office in March 1861, the nation was on the brink of disintegration. 7 southern states had already seceded from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America, and tensions were escalating. Lincoln faced the daunting task of leading a deeply divided nation through its most trying hour. From the outset, Lincoln's primary goal was the preservation of the Union. In his inaugural address, he declared that no state had the right to secede unilaterally, firmly rejecting the legitimacy of secession. However, he also reassured the southern states that he had no intention of interfering with slavery where it already existed, emphasizing that his administration's focus was solely on preserving the Union. When Confederate forces attacked Fort Sumter in April 1861, Lincoln faced a momentous decision. He issued a call for 75,000 volunteers to suppress the rebellion, effectively marking the beginning of the Civil War. Lincoln's resolute stance and his willingness to use military force to defend federal property set the tone for the conflict. One of Lincoln's most significant and enduring actions during the war was the Emancipation Proclamation issued on January 1, 1863. This executive order declared that all enslaved people in Confederate-held territory were to be thenceforward and forever free. While it did not immediately free all enslaved people, it transformed the war's purpose, making the abolition of slavery a central objective. The Emancipation Proclamation had profound implications. It galvanized Northern support for the war, framing the conflict as a moral struggle for freedom and equality. Additionally, it paved the way for the recruitment of African American soldiers into the Union Army, ultimately contributing to the Union's military strength. Lincoln faced immense challenges in leading the Union forces. He had to navigate the selection of capable generals, sometimes replacing ineffective ones. His relationships with key military leaders, such as General Ulysses S. Grant, proved pivotal in achieving Union victories. Lincoln's role in shaping military strategy and his willingness to adapt and learn from failures were crucial to the Union's eventual success. In 1864, Lincoln faced a tough re-election campaign. Despite the ongoing war and divisions within his own party, he ran on a platform that prioritized the continuation of the war and the abolition of slavery. Lincoln won a convincing victory, demonstrating the public's confidence in his leadership during a challenging period. In January 1865, with the war nearing its conclusion, Lincoln threw his considerable political weight behind the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which would abolish slavery in the United States. Lincoln's active involvement and persuasive skills were instrumental in securing the amendment's passage in Congress and ratification by the states. As the Civil War drew to a close, General Robert E. Lee's surrender to General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9, 1865, marked a momentous occasion. Lincoln's approach to the surrender was marked by his desire for reconciliation, not revenge. He offered generous terms to the Confederate soldiers, allowing them to return home with their horses and sidearms, fostering an atmosphere of unity. Tragically, just days after General Lee's surrender, Abraham Lincoln's life was cut short when he was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth on April 14, 1865, at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. His death marked a somber moment in American history, and the nation mourned the loss of the leader who had guided them through the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln's legacy is immeasurable. He not only preserved the Union, but also played a pivotal role in ending the institution of slavery in the United States. His leadership, moral clarity, and steadfast determination during one of the nation's darkest periods continue to inspire generations and remind us of the enduring principles of freedom and equality upon which the United States was founded. Abraham Lincoln's indelible mark on American history endures as a symbol of leadership and hope in times of adversity. General Ulysses S. Grant emerged as the Union's leading military figure. Known for his tenacity and strategic brilliance, Grant played a key role in several pivotal battles, including the Siege of Vicksburg in 1863 and the Appomattox Campaign in 1865, which led to General Robert E. Lee's surrender. Grant's leadership and determination were instrumental in securing Union victories. General William T. Sherman is renowned for his innovative military strategies, most notably the March to the Sea in 1864. This campaign, which involved capturing Atlanta and then embarking on a devastating march through Georgia to the coast, crippled the Confederate war effort. Sherman's ruthless tactics contributed significantly to the Union's triumph. Clara Barton, often referred to as the Angel of the Battlefield, was a pioneering nurse who selflessly cared for wounded soldiers on both sides of the conflict. Her tireless efforts to provide medical aid and establish the American Red Cross left an indelible mark on humanitarian relief efforts and healthcare. Harriet Tubman, a former enslaved person, became a heroic figure during the Civil War. She served as a nurse, a cook, and a spy for the Union Army. Tubman's courageous actions behind enemy lines and her role in the Combahee River Raid, which liberated hundreds of enslaved people, earned her well-deserved recognition as a Union hero. General George B. McClellan, though criticized for his cautious approach, played a pivotal role in the early stages of the war. He organized and trained the Army of the Potomac, laying the groundwork for future successes under Grant. McClellan's leadership and dedication to his troops endeared him to many Union soldiers. Admiral David Farragut was a naval hero of the Union, known for his daring exploits, including the capture of New Orleans in 1862 and the Battle of Mobile Bay in 1864. His famous order during the Battle of Mobile Bay, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead," epitomized his fearless commitment to the Union cause. As President Lincoln's personal secretaries, John Hay and John Nicolay played essential roles in assisting and advising the president during the Civil War. They were privy to Lincoln's inner thoughts and actions, helping to shape his decisions and preserve his legacy. Frederick Douglass, a former enslaved person turned abolitionist and writer, used his powerful words to advocate for the Union cause. He met with President Lincoln on several occasions and encouraged the recruitment of African American troops. Douglass believed that the war presented an opportunity to end slavery and push for African American civil rights. His tireless efforts contributed to the enlistment of over 180,000 black soldiers who fought for the Union. General George G. Meade commanded the Union Army of the Potomac during the critical Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. His tactical skill and leadership were instrumental in securing a Union victory that halted General Robert E. Lee's second invasion of the North. Meade's ability to command under pressure solidified his reputation as a capable military leader. As a prominent abolitionist and publisher of The Liberator, William Lloyd Garrison had spent years advocating for the immediate emancipation of enslaved people. During the Civil War, he continued to press for the end of slavery and supported the Union's efforts to abolish it. Garrison's dedication to the cause of freedom and equality never wavered. While the primary focus of Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony was women's suffrage, they were also ardent abolitionists and worked tirelessly to promote the Union cause during the Civil War. They believed that emancipation and women's rights were interconnected issues, and their activism paved the way for future social and political change. Colonel Joshua Chamberlain, a college professor turned soldier, played a pivotal role in the Battle of Gettysburg. His leadership during the defense of Little Round Top on the second day of the battle is legendary. Chamberlain and his troops held a crucial position and repelled Confederate attacks, contributing significantly to the Union's victory at Gettysburg. Salmon P. Chase, as Secretary of the Treasury under President Lincoln, was responsible for implementing the first national paper currency during the Civil War, known as greenbacks. His financial understanding and commitment to sustaining the Union's war effort through sound economic policies were essential to funding the conflict. Admiral David Farragut, best known for his bold actions at the Battle of Mobile Bay, played a vital role in securing Union control of the Mississippi River and Gulf of Mexico. His naval leadership and determination to capture key Confederate ports and control waterways significantly contributed to the Union's success. These Union heroes, each in their way, made immense sacrifices and contributions to the Union cause during the Civil War. Their actions, whether on the battlefield, in the political arena, or through their advocacy for justice and equality, helped shape the course of American history. The legacy of these remarkable individuals continues to remind us of the values and principles for which they fought and the enduring pursuit of a more perfect union. The American Civil War was a defining moment in U.S. history. pitting the Confederacy against the Union in a bitter and devastating conflict. While the Confederacy's cause ultimately centered around the preservation of slavery, it's essential to acknowledge that individual soldiers and leaders from the southern states demonstrated courage, resilience, and honor on the battlefield. In this piece, we explore some of the notable Confederate heroes of the Civil War, recognizing their contributions while considering the complex legacies that emerged from the conflict. General Robert E. Lee, a towering figure in American military history, is perhaps best known as the commander of the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia during the American Civil War. His leadership and tactical genius made him one of the most respected and celebrated military leaders of his time, even as he fought on the losing side of the conflict. In this detailed account, we delve into the life, career, and complex legacy of General Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was born on January 19, 1807, at Stratford Hall Plantation in Westmoreland County, Virginia. He hailed from a prominent and respected Virginia family, with a lineage tracing back to some of the earliest English settlers in America. Lee's father, Henry Lighthorse Harry Lee, was a Revolutionary War hero and former governor of Virginia. Young Robert E. Lee attended the United States Military Academy at West Point, graduating second in his class in 1829. His time at West Point honed his discipline, leadership, and engineering skills, setting the stage for his future military career. Lee served in various engineering and administrative roles during his early military career, including engineering projects in Georgia and Virginia. His exceptional abilities led to recognition and promotions. During the Mexican-American War, which raged between 1846 and 1848, Lee distinguished himself as a staff officer and combat engineer. He gained the admiration of his superiors, including General Winfield Scott, and played a significant role in several battles, including the Battle of Cerro Gordo and the Battle of Chapultepec. In 1831, Lee married Mary Anna Custis, the great-granddaughter of Martha Washington and the step-granddaughter of George Washington. The couple had 3 sons and 4 daughters and lived at Arlington House, a historic mansion overlooking the Potomac River. The property, which later became Arlington National Cemetery, held deep personal significance for Lee. As the United States descended into civil war in the spring of 1861, Robert E. Lee faced a fateful decision. Despite his deep reservations about secession and the dissolution of the Union, Lee chose to follow his home state of Virginia and the Confederate cause. His decision was driven by his loyalty to Virginia and his belief in defending his state against what he saw as an invasion. Lee's military acumen and leadership abilities quickly became evident during the early years of the Civil War. He served in various roles, including as a military advisor to Confederate President Jefferson Davis. In 1862, he took command of the Army of Northern Virginia, leading it to a series of stunning victories against larger Union forces in the Eastern Theater. The Battle of Gettysburg, fought from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863, marked a turning point in the Civil War. Lee's decision to launch a massive assault, known as Pickett's Charge, on the 3rd day of battle, resulted in a devastating defeat for the Confederacy. The loss at Gettysburg and the high casualties sustained by Lee's army dealt a severe blow to the Confederate cause. Following a prolonged campaign that included the Siege of Petersburg and the fall of Richmond, Lee's Army of Northern Virginia was cornered by Union forces. On April 9, 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, Lee surrendered his army to Union General Ulysses S. Grant, effectively ending the Civil War. After the war, Lee dedicated himself to the cause of reconciliation and urged his fellow Southerners to do the same. He accepted the presidency of Washington College, now Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, where he worked tirelessly to rebuild the institution and promote education in the South. General Robert E. Lee remains a complex and controversial figure in American history. While celebrated by many for his military prowess and principles of duty and honor, he is also criticized for his role in leading the Confederate Army and fighting for the preservation of slavery. The enduring debate over Lee's legacy reflects the broader complexities of the Civil War era and its enduring impact on the United States. Despite his military successes, Lee faced the insurmountable odds of limited resources and manpower as the war continued. His decision to surrender to General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in April 1865 marked the symbolic end of the Confederacy. Lee's post-war actions and his efforts to promote reconciliation helped heal the nation's wounds, demonstrating a commitment to unity and peace. General Thomas Stonewall Jackson was another Confederate hero, known for his remarkable leadership and tactical genius. His aggressive tactics and unwavering commitment to the Confederate cause earned him the nickname Stonewall at the First Battle of Bull Run. Jackson's military exploits in the Shenandoah Valley Campaign and at battles like Second Bull Run and Chancellorsville solidified his reputation as one of the Confederacy's finest commanders. However, his tragic death in May 1863, mistakenly shot by his own troops during the Battle of Chancellorsville, marked a significant loss for the Southern cause. General James Ewell Brown Stuart, known as JEB, became an iconic figure in the Confederate cavalry. His daring raids and strategic brilliance earned him fame and respect among both Confederate soldiers and civilians. Stuart's charismatic personality and bold tactics made him an indomitable force in the early years of the war. Stuart's cavalry played a critical role in battles such as First and Second Bull Run, and he became known for his distinctive plumed hat and flowing cape. His death in 1864 at the Battle of Yellow Tavern was a significant loss for the Confederacy, robbing it of one of its most dynamic and charismatic leaders. Jefferson Davis served as the President of the Confederate States of America throughout the Civil War. A former U.S. Senator and Secretary of War, Davis was a dedicated advocate for states' rights and Southern sovereignty. Despite the challenges of leading a fledgling nation in a devastating war, Davis displayed a strong sense of duty and commitment to his cause. His leadership and resilience in the face of adversity symbolized the Confederate government's determination. After the war, Davis was captured and imprisoned, but later released. His post-war life and writings continue to shape perceptions of the Confederacy's struggle. Colonel John S. Mosby, known as the Grey Ghost, was a Confederate guerrilla leader who operated behind Union lines in Virginia. Mosby's daring and resourcefulness in conducting raids and capturing Union supplies earned him a reputation as one of the Civil War's most effective, irregular wartime commanders. Mosby's unconventional tactics and ability to disrupt Union operations made him a symbol of Confederate resistance. After the war, he became an advocate for reconciliation and worked towards rebuilding the nation. General Nathan Bedford Forrest is one of the most controversial figures in Confederate history. A self-made millionaire before the war, Forrest became known for his brilliant cavalry tactics and daring leadership. His victories at battles like Bryce's Crossroads and the Battle of Mobile Bay made him a Confederate legend. However, Forrest's legacy is deeply tainted by his involvement in the massacre of African American Union soldiers at Fort Pillow and his role as a prominent figure in the post-war Ku Klux Klan. While he remained unrepentant for his wartime actions, Forrest later distanced himself from the Klan, calling for its dissolution. General Joseph E. Johnson was a seasoned military officer who served the Confederacy with distinction. Known for his cautious approach, Johnson led Confederate forces in key battles, including the First Battle of Bull Run and the Atlanta Campaign. His ability to conserve his troops and engage in strategic retreats earned him the respect of both his men and his opponents. Johnson's effective leadership and tactical acumen made him a valuable asset to the Confederate war effort. His efforts to defend Atlanta in 1864 were particularly noteworthy, despite eventually yielding the city to General William T. Sherman. Johnson's service to the Confederacy extended to the final days of the war, as he surrendered his army to Sherman in North Carolina in April 1865. General Jubal A. Early was a Confederate commander known for his aggressive and audacious tactics. Early's daring raid on Washington, D.C. in 1864, known as the Washington Raid, is one of the most audacious moments of the war. His troops came within 5 miles of the U.S. Capitol before being repelled. Early also played a significant role in the Shenandoah Valley campaigns, where he faced off against Union forces under General Philip Sheridan. Although Early's fortunes declined in the latter stages of the war, his relentless pursuit of victory and ability to keep Union forces engaged earned him the moniker the Gallant Rebel. Edmund Ruffin was not a military commander, but his actions as a prominent Southern secessionist and firebrand figure earned him a place in Confederate history. Ruffin is famously known for firing one of the first shots at Fort Sumter in April 1861, symbolizing the beginning of the Civil War. Ruffin was a fervent advocate for states' rights and slavery, and was instrumental in the secession movement in Virginia. His actions and writings reflected the extreme sentiments of some Confederate supporters, and he continued to promote the lost cause narrative in the post-war South. General Richard Taylor was the son of President Zachary Taylor and a distinguished Confederate officer. Taylor's military career, including leading troops in the Western Theater, where he faced off against Union forces under General Nathaniel Banks. His successful defense at the Battle of Mansfield in Louisiana is considered one of his notable achievements. Taylor's ability to adapt to changing circumstances and his leadership in the face of adversity were qualities that endeared him to his troops. After the war, Taylor became an advocate for reconciliation and the rebuilding of the South. Captain Raphael Semmes was a Confederate naval officer who commanded the CSS Alabama, one of the most successful commerce raiders in naval history. Under Semmes' leadership, the CSS Alabama captured or sank numerous Union merchant vessels, effectively disrupting Union commerce and drawing international attention. Semmes' daring exploits at sea made him a celebrated figure in the Confederacy, although his actions were viewed as piracy by the Union. His campaigns continued until the CSS Alabama was sunk in a battle with the USS Kearsarge off the coast of France in 1864. The Confederate heroes of the Civil War were figures who displayed remarkable leadership, valor, and commitment to their cause. Their legacies continue to be a subject of historical debate as they fought to uphold an institution as morally reprehensible as slavery. While their military prowess and dedication to their ideals are acknowledged, the Confederacy's ultimate cause remains a stain on their records. It is essential to remember that the Civil War had profound and enduring consequences for the United States, shaping the nation's future and challenging its core principles. Recognizing the complexities of these Confederate heroes' legacies allows us to better understand the complexities of the war and the ongoing journey towards unity and justice in the United States. Let's look at some of the Civil War's most famous and infamous moments, with all these figures in place. The Civil War began on April 12, 1861, at Fort Sumter, South Carolina. This Confederate bombardment of the federal fort marked the first shots of the war. Major Robert Anderson, the Union commander at Fort Sumter, surrendered after 2 days of intense shelling. The fall of Fort Sumter galvanized both the North and the South, and President Abraham Lincoln's call for 75,000 volunteers to suppress the rebellion ignited the conflict. The First Battle of Bull Run, fought on July 21, 1861, near Manassas, Virginia, was the first major land battle of the Civil War. The inexperienced Union and Confederate armies clashed in a brutal encounter. At first, it appeared that the Union forces would prevail, but Confederate reinforcements, led by General Thomas Stonewall Jackson, turned the tide. The disorganized retreat of Union forces back to Washington, D.C., marked a sobering realization that the war would be long and challenging. The Battle of Antietam, fought on September 17, 1862, near the town of Sharpsburg, Maryland, stands as one of the most pivotal and bloodiest clashes of the American Civil War. Also known as the Battle of Sharpsburg, it marked a crucial turning point in the conflict, with far-reaching consequences for both the Union and the Confederacy. By the summer of 1862, the Civil War had already been raging for over a year. The Confederate Army, under the command of General Robert E. Lee, had achieved significant victories in the Eastern Theater, including the 7 Days Battles and the Second Battle of Bull Run. Lee was eager to capitalize on his successes and take the war to Northern Territory. On the other side, Union General George B. McClellan had assumed command of the Army of the Potomac after the debacle at the First Battle of Bull Run. McClellan was known for his cautious and meticulous planning, but his slowness in pursuing Confederate forces frustrated President Abraham Lincoln. Lee's audacious invasion of Maryland in September 1862 was an attempt to draw Union forces away from Virginia, garner support from pro-Confederate Marylanders, and perhaps even influence European powers to recognize the Confederacy. The Battle of Antietam began early on the morning of September 17, 1862, as Union forces under McClellan attacked Confederate positions along Antietam Creek. The initial fighting focused on a cornfield, the Dunker Church, and the sunken road, which would later become infamous as Bloody Lane. Throughout the day, the battle raged on with intense and brutal fighting. Confederate forces under General Stonewall Jackson held their ground in the West Woods, while Union troops, including General Joseph Hooker's I Corps, launched assaults on the Confederate left. One of the most iconic moments of the battle occurred when Union forces under General Ambrose Burnside tried to cross a narrow bridge over Antietam Creek, now known as Burnside's Bridge. They faced heavy resistance from Confederate defenders and suffered significant casualties in the process. In the late afternoon, a Union assault on the sunken road finally broke the Confederate line, leading to a withdrawal by the Confederates. The bloody combat in the sunken road earned it the name Bloody Lane. As the day ended, Both sides had endured immense losses, with casualties totaling over 22,000. The Battle of Antietam remains the single bloodiest day in American military history, with more men killed, wounded, or missing than in any other one-day battle. Despite the horrific bloodshed, the Battle of Antietam was a tactical draw. Lee's Confederate forces retreated back into Virginia, ending their northern invasion. McClellan, despite having opportunities to pursue and potentially crush Lee's army, did not pursue with the vigor Lincoln desired, leading to criticism of his leadership. Shortly after the battle, President Lincoln issued the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation on September 22, 1862. This declaration warned the Confederate States that if they did not return to the Union by January 1, 1863, their enslaved people would be declared free. The Battle of Antietam's outcome, while not a Union victory per se, provided enough of a psychological boost for Lincoln to issue this landmark document. The Union's ability to hold its own against Confederate forces at Antietam also affected international opinion. It discouraged European powers from recognizing the Confederacy and potentially intervening on its behalf. Despite Antietam's inconclusive outcome, President Lincoln relieved General McClellan of his command, citing his failure to pursue the retreating Confederates aggressively. McClellan's cautious approach and strained relationship with Lincoln led to his removal. The Battle of Antietam was a brutal and costly clash that, while not a clear-cut victory for either side, had profound implications for the course of the Civil War. It set the stage for significant developments, including the Emancipation Proclamation and changes in military leadership. The battle's legacy endures as a reminder of the high price paid in the struggle for freedom and preserving the Union during the American Civil War. The Battle of Gettysburg, fought from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863, in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, stands as one of the most significant and momentous clashes of the American Civil War. Often regarded as the turning point of the conflict, this battle had far-reaching implications for both the Union and the Confederacy. By the summer of 1863, the American Civil War had raged for over 2 years, marked by a series of bloody confrontations, including the Battle of Antietam and the Battle of Chancellorsville. General Robert E. Lee, commanding the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, was eager to capitalize on his recent successes and take the war northward. Lee aimed to relieve pressure on war-torn Virginia, gather supplies, and potentially influence foreign powers, such as Britain and France, to recognize the Confederate cause. On the other side, General George G. Meade had recently assumed command of the Union Army of the Potomac, following Joseph Hooker's resignation after the Battle of Chancellorsville. Meade faced the daunting task of defending Union territory against Lee's advancing Confederate forces. Day 1, July 1st, 1863. The Battle of Gettysburg began when Confederate forces under General A.P. Hill engaged Union cavalry units in the town of Gettysburg. The skirmish escalated into a full-scale battle as Union reinforcements arrived. By the end of the day, Union forces had been pushed back to Cemetery Hill, a prominent ridge south of town. Day 2, July 2nd, 1863. Lee's Confederate forces launched attacks on both the Union left flank at Little Round Top and the Union right at Culp's Hill. The day saw intensive fighting, with Confederate attempts to break through Union lines ultimately failing. Little Round Top, defended by Union troops under Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, held against repeated Confederate assaults. Day 3, July 3rd, 1863. The climax of the battle came on the third day, when Lee ordered General George Pickett to lead a massive assault, later known as Pickett's Charge, against the center of the Union line at Cemetery Ridge. The assault, characterized by a mile-long march under heavy Union artillery and musket fire, ended in disaster for the Confederates. Pickett's men suffered catastrophic casualties, and the charge is often cited as the high-water mark of the Confederacy. The Battle of Gettysburg resulted in a Union victory, but it came at an enormous cost. The casualties on both sides were staggering, with estimates suggesting over 50,000 men killed, wounded, or missing. Despite its terrible toll, the Battle of Gettysburg marked a crucial turning point in the Civil War. The Union victory bolstered Northern morale and dashed Lee's hopes of achieving a significant victory on Union soil. It also ended Confederate attempts to secure foreign intervention. On November 19, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg. The address is as follows. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Despite the victory, General Meade faced criticism for not aggressively pursuing Lee's retreating army. Some believe he missed an opportunity to potentially end the war earlier. Meade's caution led to lingering debates about the battle's true significance. Gettysburg's National Military Park preserves the battlefield's historic landmarks and serves as a powerful reminder of the sacrifice and valor displayed during the battle. Visitors can explore the battlefield's many monuments, including the imposing Pennsylvania State Memorial and the Eternal Light Peace Memorial. The Battle of Gettysburg's legacy endures as a symbol of the nation's struggle for unity and freedom. It serves as a testament to the courage and sacrifice of the soldiers who fought there and the enduring principles upon which the United States was founded. The Battle of Gettysburg remains an enduring symbol of the American Civil War's profound impact on the nation. Its 3 days of brutal combat, culminating in Pickett's Charge, continue to capture the imagination and reflect the tremendous sacrifices made on both sides. More importantly, it reinforces the enduring principles of freedom and equality upon which the United States was built, reminding us of the nation's resilience in the face of adversity. The Siege of Vicksburg, which took place from May the 18th to July the 4th, 1863, was a critical campaign in the Western theatre of the war. General Ulysses S. Grant's Union forces laid siege to the Confederate stronghold of Vicksburg, Mississippi. The lengthy siege ended with the surrender of Confederate General John C. Pemberton's forces. The victory gave the Union control of the Mississippi River, effectively splitting the Confederacy in two. In late 1864, General William T. Sherman embarked on his famous March to the Sea, a brutal campaign of total war through Georgia. Sherman's troops practiced scorched earth tactics, destroying everything in their path, from railways to civilian infrastructure. The March to the Sea culminated in the capture of Savannah in December 1864, and demonstrated the Union's resolve to bring the Confederacy to its knees. The Overland Campaign in Virginia, which unfolded in 1864, witnessed some of the war's most brutal battles. The Wilderness, Spotsylvania Courthouse, and Cold Harbor are among the most infamous engagements. These battles featured heavy casualties and entrenched warfare, where the soldiers endured horrific conditions and unrelenting combat. General Grant's determination to press on, despite the losses, demonstrated the North's commitment to winning the war. The Siege of Petersburg, which began in June 1864 and lasted nearly 10 months, was a prolonged and grueling campaign. Located just south of Richmond, Virginia, Petersburg was a vital supply hub for the Confederate capital. Union forces under General Grant sought to cut off Petersburg's supply lines and weaken the Confederacy further. The siege featured trench warfare reminiscent of World War I and included battles like the Crater, where a Union mine explosion resulted in a chaotic and bloody engagement. The Battle of Chancellorsville, fought from April the 30th to May the 6th, 1863, was a critical engagement in Virginia. Confederate General Robert E. Lee, often outnumbered, devised a daring plan that split his forces. General Thomas Stonewall Jackson executed a flanking maneuver that took Union forces by surprise and resulted in a Confederate victory. Tragically, during the battle, Johnson was accidentally shot by his own troops and later died, marking a significant loss for the Confederacy. The Battle of Shiloh, fought on April the 6th and 7th, 1862, in southwestern Tennessee, was one of the earliest major battles in the Western Theater. General Ulysses S. Grant's Union forces clashed with Confederate troops under Generals Albert Sidney Johnston and P.G.T. Beauregard. The battle resulted in staggering casualties, with over 23,000 killed, wounded, or missing. The Union ultimately emerged victorious, gaining control of key river routes in the West. The Battle of Fredericksburg, fought between December the 11th and the 15th, 1862 in Virginia, was a stark example of the challenges faced by Union forces. General Ambrose Burnside's Union Army of the Potomac attacked well-fortified Confederate positions commanded by General Robert E. Lee. The result was a devastating Union defeat, with Confederate forces entrenched on Mary's Heights, inflicting heavy casualties on Union troops. The battle remains a poignant symbol of the challenges faced by Union commanders in the Eastern Theater. The Battle of Chickamauga, fought between September the 19th and 20th, 1863, near Chattanooga, Tennessee, was one of the largest and deadliest battles in the Western Theater. Confederate forces under General Braxton Bragg clashed with Union troops led by General William Rosecrans. Despite early Union successes, a series of tactical errors allowed Confederate forces to rally and secure a costly victory. Chickamauga resulted in over 34,000 casualties, cementing its status as one of the Civil War's bloodiest battles. The Battle of Fort Donelson, fought between February the 11th and 16th, 1862 in Tennessee, was a significant early Union victory. General Ulysses S. Grant's forces besieged and captured the Confederate fort, securing control of a key stretch of the Cumberland River. Grant's reputation as an aggressive and successful commander began to rise following this battle, earning him the nickname Unconditional Surrender Grant. The Battle of Newmarket, fought on May 15, 1864, in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, featured an unusual Confederate victory. Confederate forces, including Virginia Military Institute cadets, fought Union troops under General Franz Sigel. The young VMI cadets played a significant role in the Confederate victory, and the battle remains an iconic moment in the war's history. The Battle of Mobile Bay, fought between August 2nd and the 23rd, 1864 in Alabama, marked a Union victory that tightened the blockade of Confederate ports. Union Admiral David Farragut led a daring naval assault on the heavily fortified bay. His famous order, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead," demonstrated his determination to break through the Confederate defenses. The victory at Mobile Bay was a significant blow to the Confederacy's ability to import and export goods. The Battle of Sailor's Creek, fought on April 6, 1865 in Virginia, was one of the final engagements of the Civil War. Confederate forces, under Generals Richard Ewell and Richard Anderson, found themselves trapped by pursuing Union troops. The battle resulted in a significant Union victory and the capture of a large portion of General Lee's army. It played a role in the subsequent surrender of Lee's forces at Appomattox Courthouse. The Battle of Olustee, fought on February 20, 1864 in Florida, was a significant Confederate victory that often goes overlooked. Union forces, attempting to gain control of Florida and disrupt Confederate supply lines, clashed with Confederate troops under General Joseph Finnegan. The battle was marked by intense fighting in difficult terrain and resulted in a Confederate victory that helped secure Florida for the Confederacy. The Battle of Palmito Ranch, fought on May 12th and 13th, 1865 in Texas, is often considered the final battle of the Civil War. Confederate forces engaged Union troops in a skirmish near the Rio Grande. The battle ended in a Confederate victory, though it occurred weeks after General Robert E. Lee's surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. It serves as a poignant reminder of the war's winding down and the challenges of communication in a vast and divided nation. The surrender of General Robert E. Lee to General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9, 1865, marked the effective end of the Civil War. Lee's decision to surrender his Confederate Army of Northern Virginia signaled the Confederacy's defeat. The terms of surrender were generous, emphasizing reconciliation rather than retribution, and set the stage for the nation's post-war recovery. The war's conclusion was followed by a tragedy that shook the nation. On the evening of April 14, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth while attending a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. Lincoln's death cast a pall over the celebrations of victory and marked a somber moment in American history. The American Civil War left an indelible mark on the United States, forever altering the nation's trajectory. The famous moments and bloodiest battles of the war, marked by immense sacrifice and suffering, serve as enduring reminders of the price paid for the preservation of the Union and the ultimate triumph of freedom and equality. The conclusion of the Civil War marked the end of slavery in the United States, with the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution in December 1865. While the war abolished slavery, it did not immediately eradicate the deeply ingrained racism and discrimination that had plagued the nation for centuries. The period of Reconstruction that followed the American Civil War, from 1865 to 1877, was a time of profound transformation and turmoil in the United States. It represented an attempt to heal the nation's wounds, redefine citizenship, and establish a new social and political order in the aftermath of a devastating conflict. In this comprehensive account, we explore the complex and multifaceted history of the Reconstruction era, its goals, challenges, achievements, and enduring legacy. The primary objective of Reconstruction was to restore the seceded states to the Union and reintegrate them into a single nation. This process aimed to heal the physical, economic, and emotional wounds caused by the Civil War. The Emancipation Proclamation and the passage of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which was ratified in 1865, formally abolished slavery throughout the nation. Reconstruction aimed to ensure the freedom and civil rights of formerly enslaved African Americans. Southern states had been devastated by the war, and the Reconstruction governments sought to rebuild infrastructure, economies, and institutions in the region. Reconstruction sought to protect the civil rights and political participation of African Americans who had been denied those rights during the pre-war era. The initial phase of Reconstruction, often referred to as Presidential Reconstruction, took place under the leadership of President Andrew Johnson. Johnson's approach was more lenient towards the Southern states. His primary conditions for their re-entry into the Union included the abolition of slavery, as mandated by the 13th Amendment, and the repudiation of secession. During this period, Southern states began to enact black codes, which imposed restrictions on the civil and political rights of African Americans. These codes sought to restore white supremacy and limit the economic opportunities of newly freed slaves. As tensions grew between President Johnson and the Republican-controlled Congress over the treatment of Southern states, Congress passed the Reconstruction Act of 1867. This legislation marked the beginning of radical Reconstruction, a more assertive phase of Reconstruction that aimed to address the shortcomings of presidential Reconstruction. The Reconstruction Act divided the former Confederate states into military districts, each under the control of a Union general. The presence of federal troops was intended to safeguard the rights of African Americans and ensure that the states complied with the new requirements for re-entry into the Union. The passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and the 14th Amendment in 1868 aimed to secure the civil rights of African Americans. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States and guaranteed equal protection under the law. The 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, prohibited states from denying voting rights to citizens based on their race or previous condition of servitude, further expanding suffrage for African Americans. During this period, African Americans actively engaged in politics, serving in state legislatures, Congress, and local government offices. Prominent figures like Hiram Revels and Blanche K. Bruce became the first African Americans to serve in the U.S. Senate. Reconstruction faced significant challenges, including Southern white supremacists who used violence, intimidation, and the formation of groups like the Ku Klux Klan to suppress African American political participation and enforce racial segregation. The South's economy was in shambles, and the process of rebuilding was slow and fraught with challenges. Sharecropping and tenant farming systems often trapped African Americans in cycles of debt and poverty. Many white Southerners resented the changes imposed by Reconstruction and resisted them at every turn. Confederate leaders were also allowed to return to political power, contributing to efforts to roll back the gains made by African Americans. Disputed elections and allegations of corruption marred the political landscape during this period, further complicating efforts at reform and progress. The contested presidential election of 1876 between Republican Rutherford B. Hayes and Democrat Samuel J. Tilden had significant consequences for Reconstruction. The Compromise of 1877, brokered to resolve the dispute, resulted in the withdrawal of federal troops from the South and the end of Reconstruction. As a result, Southern states regained control over their governments, leading to the rise of Jim Crow's law, segregation, and the disenfranchisement of African Americans. The Reconstruction era left a complex and enduring legacy. The Reconstruction Amendments, namely 13th, 14th, and 15th, laid the legal foundation for civil rights and equal protection under the law, becoming critical tools in later struggles for civil rights. Despite the setbacks, Reconstruction followed a period of African American political activism, creating a legacy of resilience and determination. Historians continue to debate the successes and failures of Reconstruction, with some arguing that it laid the groundwork for later civil rights movements, while others contend that it fell short of its goals. The fight for racial equality and civil rights in the United States continues to this day, with Reconstruction serving as a historical precedent and touchstone for ongoing struggles. Reconstruction was a tumultuous period in American history, marked by both progress and backlash. Its legacy remains a subject of debate and reflection, and its enduring lessons about the challenges of achieving racial equality and social justice continue to shape the nation's identity and aspirations. The effects of the Civil War resonated for generations. The scars of the conflict were visible in the physical and emotional devastation it wrought on the nation. The war left an estimated 620,000 soldiers dead and countless others maimed or traumatized. Families were torn apart and communities were shattered. The Reconstruction period was followed by the Jim Crow era, characterized by racial segregation and systemic discrimination, which persisted for nearly a century. The struggle for civil rights and equality for African Americans continued through the 20th century, culminating in the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. The American Civil War's long-term impact on American society is profound and far-reaching, touching every aspect of the nation's identity, politics, economy, and culture. In this exploration, we delve into the enduring consequences of the Civil War and the invaluable lessons it offers for the present and future. Perhaps the most transformative consequence of the Civil War was the abolition of slavery. The 13th Amendment, ratified in 1865, permanently ended the institution of slavery in the United States. This watershed moment marked the beginning of a centuries-long struggle for civil rights and racial equality. The legacy of this achievement is still evident today. The African American community's ongoing fight for justice, civil rights, and equal opportunity is rooted in the abolition of slavery during the Civil War. The civil rights movement of the 20th century drew inspiration from the struggles and sacrifices of those who came before, ultimately leading to significant legal and societal changes. The Civil War challenged and redefined the very idea of what it meant to be an American. It forced the nation to confront its most profound divisions and question its commitment to democracy, freedom, and equality. The war solidified the notion that the United States was an indivisible nation and established the federal government's authority over the states. This redefined national identity still influences the United States today, emphasizing the importance of unity, democracy, and the rule of law. The Pledge of Allegiance's reference to one nation indivisible reflects the enduring legacy of the Civil War. The Civil War reshaped American politics in profound ways. The rise of the Republican Party as the party of emancipation and union marked a significant shift in the nation's political landscape. The war also expanded the federal government's role, as it had to raise enormous sums of money and manage resources to support the Union war effort. Additionally, the Reconstruction era following the war saw the passage of constitutional amendments, such as the 14th and 15th Amendments, aimed at securing civil rights and suffrage for African Americans. These amendments played a pivotal role in shaping the modern political landscape and continue to inform debates on voting rights and equal protection. The Civil War had a lasting impact on the American economy. It accelerated industrialization in the North, leading to the growth of factories, railways, and technological innovation. The South, devastated by the war, faced economic challenges, including the destruction of infrastructure and the loss of enslaved labor. The post-war years witnessed the emergence of new economic opportunities and disparities. While industrialization drove economic growth, it also led to the exploitation of labor and the rise of economic inequality. The legacy of these developments can be seen in contemporary discussions about income inequality, workers' rights, and the role of government in regulating the economy. The Civil War had a profound impact on American culture and society. It inspired literature, art, and music that grappled with the war's themes of sacrifice, suffering, and unity. Prominent authors like Walt Whitman and Ambrose Bierce produced works that continue to shape American literature. Socially, the war altered the fabric of American society by challenging traditional gender roles. Women played significant roles on the home front as nurses, volunteers, and activists. These experiences paved the way for the late 19th and early 20th century women's suffrage and feminist movements. The Civil War offers several crucial lessons for the present and future. Its immense human and material cost serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of extreme divisions within a nation. It underscores the importance of unity, compromise, and dialogue in resolving disputes. The ongoing struggle for civil rights and racial equality in the United States draws inspiration from the Civil War's legacy. The fight for justice, fairness, and equal opportunity remains an integral part of the nation's identity. The Civil War demonstrated the pivotal role of government in times of crisis. It emphasized the need for effective governance, resource management, and leadership to address national challenges. The resilience displayed by Americans during the Civil War is a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure and overcome adversity. It serves as a reminder that even in the face of profound challenges, individuals and communities can find strength and hope. The Civil War and its aftermath underscore the ongoing pursuit of a more perfect union, as envisioned in the preamble to the US Constitution. The nation's ability to adapt, grow, and evolve is central to its success. In conclusion, the American Civil War's long-term impact on society is immeasurable, shaping the nation's identity, politics, economy, and culture. Its lessons continue to resonate today, reminding us of the enduring importance of unity, justice, and the pursuit of a more perfect union. As we confront contemporary challenges and divisions, the Civil War's legacy serves as a powerful beacon of hope and a source of inspiration for a better future.